There comes an age when people are no longer curious out of pride, but because they have lived through too much loss. An age when we wake up earlier, sleep less, and carry more questions than answers. We once believed that living well was enough, that praying was enough, that patience was enough. And yet life still took away the people we loved most, still left behind silences with no explanation. It is in that moment, not for the young but for those who have walked through half a lifetime, that a quiet question finally dares to rise. If God is there, why has he been silent for so long? The forgotten apocalypses were not written for the curious, but for those who have suffered, who have lost, who have doubted, yet have not given up. If these words have reached you, perhaps it is not by chance. And if you wish to continue listening, stay with us. Subscribe to the channel, and let us walk a little slower, a little deeper, on the journey to rediscover, meaning that no one ever taught us how to find. Many people hear the word apocalypse and immediately think of the end of the world, of fire, collapse, and fear repeated across generations. But for the ancients, apocalypse was not a final ending, but the moment when the veil is lifted. It is the moment when human beings stop running and are forced to face the truth of themselves. When a father realizes he has been silent with his child for too long. When a mother understands that some pain cannot be prayed away. When an elderly person looks back on an entire lifetime and asks what was real and what was only habit. Apocalypse does not come to destroy the world, but to break the illusions that helped us survive without truly living. It does not shout with thunder, but whispers softly that many of the things we believed for so long were held out of fear, not understanding. And when that realization arrives, people begin to change, quietly, without drama, like a small crack just wide enough for light to enter. There are truths that were not buried because they were false, but because they no longer required people to bow their heads. When someone reads and realizes they can understand, can choose, can take responsibility for their own soul, fear begins to loosen its grip. And when fear fades, authority slowly loses its voice. These hidden apocalypses were born in a time when people were too fragile to live without guidance, yet too awake to keep believing ready-made answers. They do not call for rebellion. They do not urge the tearing down of temples. They simply place a mirror quietly into human hands. In that reflection, people see how many things they believed only because they were told to believe, how many things they feared only because they were told to fear. And that moment is the most dangerous of all, because once human beings begin to think with their own conscience, no one else can think for them, believe for them, or be saved in their place. Enoch did not enter Revelation as a seeker of power. He was drawn into it by a restless unease he could not silence. He saw what no one wished to tell. Angels once called light, now carrying deep fractures within them. They did not fall because of hatred, but because they drew too close to humanity, too curious about human pain and longing. Enoch witnessed knowledge given at the wrong time, power placed into hearts not yet mature enough to hold it. And from that moment, evil no longer appeared simple. It did not rise only from human greed, but from a heaven that had blurred the line between love and control. Reading Enoch, one no longer rushes to blame oneself, but begins to see humanity as part of a much larger tragedy. A tragedy in which humans are both victims and bearers of consequences born from decisions far beyond their reach. And that is why Enoch's apocalypse became dangerous, because it invites us to stop hating ourselves and to begin questioning the powers that shaped history through mistakes made long ago. Abraham entered the apocalypse not as a specially chosen man, but as a human being trying to hold on to faith in a world full of contradictions. He was not given comforting answers, nor softened by sweet promises. Instead, he was shown the raw truth of choice and consequence. In this revelation, God does not force people to believe, nor does he save them simply through ritual or familiar prayers. Each soul is placed before its own path, and what decides their fate is not what they say with their lips, but how they chose to live when no one was watching. Abraham understood that faith is not a place to escape responsibility, but a place where one must confront oneself. And perhaps what troubled the church most was not the content of this apocalypse, but the feeling it leaves behind. A deeply human feeling that no one can live for us, believe for us, or bear our consequences in our place. In that heavy silence, Abraham did not lose his faith. He only lost his illusions. And from that moment, his faith became more painful, more real, and far lonelier than before. In this apocalypse, Adam and Eve are no longer naive figures who fell simply because of curiosity, but the first humans forced to carry the pain of realizing that the world is not simple at all. When the forbidden fruit was eaten, what opened was not only sin, but awareness. The awareness that people can lose one another, can grow old, can die, and that no promise guarantees tomorrow. Adam began to fear not because he was punished, but because he knew, for the first time, that he could lose Eve. Eve wept not because she was cast out of the garden, but because she understood that love always carries risk. In the apocalypse of Moses, death is not a sentence, but the price of becoming truly human. No longer living as sheltered children, but living with memory, responsibility, and choice. And as one reads this, it becomes clear that humanity's deepest pain is not disobedience, but awakening. Awakening to love more deeply, remember more painfully, and endure more fully. This perspective makes the story of Adam and Eve feel strangely close, because every one of us has traded innocent peace for a meaningful life, even knowing in advance that it would hurt. Peter saw hell, but what haunted him was not the fire or the screams. It was the familiar faces within that despair. He realized they were not monsters, but ordinary people who had once loved, feared, and failed like anyone else. In this apocalypse, punishment does not arrive as sudden wrath, but as the slow consequence of wounds left unhealed. Peter saw souls suffering not only because of sin, but because no one had ever truly listened to them. No one had ever taught them how to return. And then, in the thick darkness, he heard a whisper that made every doctrine tremble, that mercy might reach farther than punishment itself. Hell was no longer a door locked forever, but a place waiting for awakening. That is what made Peter's apocalypse dangerous, because if hope still exists beyond failure, fear no longer has the power to control human beings. By the time one reaches this point, hell is no longer seen through terror, but through a deeply human sorrow for lost souls who were never loved enough to change. Paul did not pass through the heavens as a victor. He traveled as a man carrying the quiet burden of all humanity. In this apocalypse, he saw nameless souls, without labels, without denominations, without remembered prayers. They had never learned the correct teachings or rituals, yet they lived by their conscience in the smallest of acts. Paul realized that judgment does not begin with words, but with how a person treats others when no one is watching. Some souls were lifted up, not because they spoke rightly, but because they did not turn away when they could help. Others sank not because they believed wrongly, but because they had grown accustomed to indifference toward the suffering beside them. This revelation leaves the reader silent, because it asks a simple yet heavy question. If the final day does not ask what we believed, but how we lived, what answer would we give? And it is this simplicity that makes Paul's apocalypse so difficult to accept, because it forces each of us to look back on our lives not through doctrine, but through the deeply human choices, quietly made over many years. Baruch looked at this world through the eyes of someone long familiar with ruins. He no longer asked why human beings suffer, but why suffering seems woven into the very structure of life itself. In this apocalypse, the world does not collapse because of a single mistake, but because it carried fractures from the very beginning. Baruch saw righteous people still bearing injustice, saw sincere prayers still falling into silence. And what pained him most was not punishment, but the feeling of being forgotten. Yet the revelation whispers another truth, that not every pain is a punishment, and not every silence is a rejection. Some suffering exists to test how humans see one another. Some darkness remains to see whether we can still choose compassion when no explanation is given. Reading Baruch, one stops blaming oneself every time life feels unfair, and begins learning how to endure without losing kindness. It is this quiet consolation that makes this apocalypse dangerous, because it offers no quick reward, only something far more difficult: the courage to keep living with goodness in a world that has not yet been healed. The Gnostic apocalypses that were erased do not tell a story of collapse, but of awakening, which makes them more dangerous than any threat. In them, human beings are not taught to fear, but invited to understand. The material world appears not as a perfect gift, but as a place of limitation, where the soul is lulled to sleep by habit, ritual, and the fear of being abandoned. Jesus in these texts does not stand above to judge. He sits close and speaks like a patient teacher, saying that salvation does not come from believing the correct words, but from opening one's eyes to the truth within. Gnosis, knowledge, is not arrogance, but the courage to face inner darkness so it no longer controls us. This unsettles many, because if people can awaken on their own, fear loses its place, power loses its role, and faith is no longer a safe hiding place. Reading these apocalypses, one no longer asks how to be saved, but begins asking where one is still asleep within one's own life. And perhaps that is the deepest reason they were buried, because a truly awakened person cannot easily be led by promises or threats again. When these apocalypses are placed side by side, an uncomfortable truth slowly emerges. That faith is no longer a safe ticket, carrying people beyond all consequences. Belief alone is no longer enough to escape. Prayer alone can no longer replace the way one lives each day. In this part, human beings stand exposed before themselves, with no doctrine to hide behind, no title to cling to. The question is no longer whom we belong to or what we claim to believe, but how we treated others when no one was watching. This frightens many, because responsibility returns to where it belongs, resting on each individual. No one carries it for us. No one suffers in our place. No promise erases what we have chosen. Yet it is here that human dignity is restored. For if we must bear responsibility, we also hold the power to change. Faith is no longer an escape from life, but an invitation to enter life more awake, more honest. And for many, this is the hardest moment, realizing that salvation is not exemption, but the courage to live in a way worthy of what we have come to understand. As fear slowly withdraws, these apocalypses do not leave emptiness behind, but open a slow path of healing. They do not tell people to believe more, but invite them to understand themselves more deeply. To understand why we fear loss, why we feel anger, why we pray in silence. Here, apocalypse is no longer a trumpet of disaster, but a gentle reminder that every wound must be acknowledged before it can be healed. Human beings are not forced to be perfect, only invited to be honest. Honest with unnamed pain, with mistakes not yet repaired, with the desire to be loved as we are. By this point, many realize that faith has not been broken. It has simply been returned to its proper place. No longer a coat to shield us from the rain, but a small light guiding each step in the dark. And it is this light that helps people continue. Not faster, not stronger, but less lost, less alone, along the long and shadowed path of being human. If you have come this far, perhaps you are not searching for the end of the world, but for a way to keep believing without deceiving yourself. These apocalypses were never meant to destroy anyone's faith. They only seek to return to human beings the right to think, to doubt, and to grow in silence. Some truths are not meant for crowds, but for those who have lived long enough to understand that true belief does not help us escape life. It helps us remain fully present within it. If these words touch you, it may not be because they are new, but because you are ready. Ready to listen without arguing. Ready to believe without blindness. Ready to live with kindness, even when no certain promise waits ahead. And if you choose to stay, to listen a little longer, not to know more, but to understand more deeply, then this journey continues. Quietly, without force, only as a whisper meant for those still brave enough to be human in a world full of noise, but so little listening.